You trust strangers every day and you never even notice it. You sit next to them on planes. You hand them your food. You fall asleep on trains beside people whose names you'll never know, and somehow you're fine with it. But in 1973, one scientist wanted to know exactly how far that trust could be pushed before it broke. So he built a raft, put 11 strangers on it, and removed every single exit. No walls, no doors, no way off. Just open ocean in every direction for 101 days straight. His name was Santiago Genovés, a Mexican anthropologist who had spent 40 years chasing the same obsession. Where does human violence actually come from? Not in soldiers, not in criminals. In ordinary people, the kind who smile at you in an elevator. His theory was simple, and he believed it completely. The violence is already inside all of us. You just need enough pressure and enough isolation to force it out. This wasn't a guess. He was certain. And he was about to prove it, live, on the open Atlantic. He called the project Acali. He told the press it was about peace. That was not the whole truth. Genovés built his crew the way someone builds a weapon. Different religions, different nationalities, different languages. 6 women, 5 men, because he believed more women meant faster sexual competition among the men. Several participants were chosen specifically for being, in his own words, sexually attractive. He stocked the raft with alcohol, he wired the cabin with recording equipment, and before anyone boarded, he ran deep psychological evaluations on every single crew member, including himself. His own results came back describing him as authoritarian, intolerant, and immature. He got on the raft anyway. The Acali was 12 meters long. The sleeping cabin was 4 meters square, roughly the size of a garden shed, for 11 adults. Nobody could stand up straight inside it. There was no engine, no phone, no privacy. The toilet was a hole cut into the deck, open to the ocean, visible to everyone. All day, every day. Men and women slept side by side in a fixed rotation that Genovés arranged himself on purpose. On May 12, 1973, they left the Canary Islands behind them. 6,000 kilometers of open Atlantic stood between the crew and Mexico. No motor, just wind, current, and time. By the end of week 1, Genovés had a problem. Nobody was fighting. The crew had already organized itself without him. Maria Björnstam, the Swedish captain and the first woman in history to hold a maritime command certificate, took over navigation. Servan, the French diver, handled repairs. The Israeli doctor on board started checking on everyone's health without being asked. They shared food. They traded languages. At night, they sat together on deck and watched the stars in total silence. This was not the data Genovés needed, so he decided to help things along. Every week, he handed out questionnaires. Who do you dislike most on this raft? Who would you most like to sleep with? Then, instead of keeping the answers private, he read them out loud in front of everyone. He pinned a list to the cabin wall, ranking the women by attractiveness. He told the only black woman on board that she was, in his own word, primitive, and suggested she pair off with the only black man because it was, in his words, natural. The crew read his notes. They looked at each other, and then they went back to cooking dinner, because something Genovés never planned for was already happening on that raft. Stripped of jobs, phones, and obligations, 11 strangers were quietly starting to enjoy each other's company. One woman later said the raft became an escape from an abusive relationship back home, and the crew helped carry her through it. Another, the only African-American woman on board, realized her ancestors had likely crossed this exact stretch of ocean in chains centuries earlier. She said it made her grateful for every free day she had left on that deck. Meanwhile, Genovés sat in the corner of that 4-meter cabin, waiting for someone to break. So he started undermining Maria's authority directly, overruling her calls, second-guessing every decision she made. Then the rudder broke. Servan, the professional diver, the one person actually trained for this, suited up to fix it. Genovés stopped her. "She's a woman," he said. "She can't go overboard." He took her equipment instead, gear he had never once used, and dove into the ocean himself. He nearly drowned. The rudder stayed broken. That night, While Genovese slept, Servan quietly put her gear back on, slipped into the dark water alone, and fixed the rudder herself. 5 minutes. Job done. In the morning, Genovese found out and called it mutiny. A few weeks later, the crew caught a shark for dinner. In his journal that night, Genovese described the scene as a savage frenzy, bodies tearing flesh apart like animals. The actual footage from that day shows 11 people calmly preparing a meal together. By now, the crew had started having quiet conversations of their own. Not about each other, about him. A few of them seriously discussed whether Genovese might simply disappear over the side one night. They decided against it, which, honestly, was generous of them. Then came the hurricane. Weather reports warned of a major storm sitting directly in their path through the Caribbean. Maria gave the order to find shelter immediately. Genovese overruled her. He physically removed her as captain and named himself in her place, because a storm, he reasoned, was exactly the kind of extreme pressure that might finally force out the violence he'd been chasing for months. Under maritime law, removing a ship's captain at sea carries some of the harshest penalties on the books. He did it anyway. The storm hit. 11 people packed into a 4-meter cabin while the Atlantic tried to sink them. Nobody panicked. Nobody turned on anyone else. Then a cargo freighter appeared on the horizon, coming straight at the raft, full speed, with no sign of slowing down. Genovese froze completely. He ran in circles on the deck with no idea what to do. Maria, the captain he had just stripped of command days earlier, stepped forward, organized the crew, and used flares to divert the freighter at the last possible moment. After that night, nobody questioned who the real captain was. On August 20th, 1973, the Acali reached Cozumel, Mexico. 101 days at sea, finally over. By then, Genovese had spent the final weeks below deck, sick, according to his own account. The medic on board, also a participant, said he was almost certainly faking it for attention. The press had already started calling it the sex raft. His university had already cut ties with him publicly. The crew celebrated without him. They swam. They cooked. They laughed on the deck of the raft that had, against every one of his predictions, held them together instead of tearing them apart. Below deck, alone, Genovese opened his journal one final time. He wrote a single sentence. Only one person on this raft has shown any real aggression. And that is me. He had built a machine specifically designed to hunt for violence hiding inside ordinary people. The only violence it ever actually found was his own. In 2018, a filmmaker tracked down 7 of the surviving crew members and built a full-size replica of the Acali. He invited them all back on board. Every one of them came, and more than one of them said the exact same thing, standing on that deck decades later. They missed it. Not the open toilet, not the ceiling you couldn't stand under, not Genovese. The simplicity. Most people quietly assume that under real pressure, in a real crisis, other people would eventually show them something ugly. That the aggression is always sitting in there, waiting for the right moment. Santiago Genovese believed that for 40 years. Then he spent 101 days trying to prove it, using every tool he had available to him. What his own experiment proved instead was something else entirely. Strip away the noise, remove the performance, take away every exit. What tends to surface in people is not violence. It's something quieter and a lot harder to weaponize into a headline. You trust strangers every day and you never even notice it. Maybe, deep down, you already knew they were worth it.